A silver-haired man stepped from the limo by pump 4. Looking at my "will work" sign, he asked if I was his granddaughter. He knew about the scar on my wrist, a secret I'd never shared. I thought I was begging for a meal. I was actually walking into a war that would expose my entire family's greed to the boardroom. My name is Harper Phillips. I am 28 years old, and as of 6 o'clock this morning, I am officially invisible. The eviction notice had been the final nail. Losing the part-time job at the diner 3 days ago was the hammer. My manager said I was distracted. He was right. My distraction was a bank account balance that had dipped below zero and refused to come back up. So now I am here, standing on a cracked concrete island at a gas station on the frayed edge of Charlotte, where the city's ambition bleeds into the long, indifferent stretches of highway. My entire life is contained in a single backpack and in the warm, wiry body of Toby, my rescue mutt, who leans against my leg. His unwavering trust is the heaviest thing I own. I'm holding a piece of cardboard I'd fished from a dumpster behind the convenience store, written on in thick black marker. It says, "Need a meal. Will work." The shame is a physical taste, metallic and hot, coating the back of my throat. The air itself is an assault. It's a thick, shimmering blanket of heat, over 90 degrees before noon. It smells of high-test gasoline, hot asphalt, and the sickly sweet cherry of a melted slushy someone left on the pavement. The sun is a white hole in the hazy Carolina sky, pressing down, baking the shame right into my skin. Every asterisk ding asterisk from the pump at bay number 3 is a punctuation mark, a reminder of a simple transaction I am no longer part of. A truck pulls up. The driver swipes a card. The pump whirs. He leaves. A minivan. The same life moving on. My stomach isn't just growling, it's a tight, acidic knot. The hunger is so sharp it's almost a noise. I'm trying to calculate how long the half bag of dog food in my backpack will last Toby if I portion it out. I'm focusing on a crack in the pavement, watching an ant struggle with a crumb. When a shadow falls over me, it's not just a shadow. It's an eclipse. I look up and the world tilts. A limousine, long and impossibly black, has glided into the slot by pump number 4. It doesn't belong here. This is a place for busted pickups and family sedans, not for something that looks like it absorbs light. The car is so clean it reflects the grime of the gas station back on itself. It doesn't even have the decency to hum, its engine is utterly silent. The driver's door opens, and a man in a sharp black suit emerges. He's built like a linebacker, but he just moves to the front of the car and stands, hands clasped, watching nothing. Then the back door opens. It makes a quiet, expensive asterisk thunk star. The man who steps out moves with a deliberate, measured grace. He can't be rushed. He is tall, thin, and wears a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than my last year's rent. His hair is thick and silver, combed back perfectly. He takes a moment, adjusting his cuff, and looks at the grimy convenience store with its buzzing neon open sign. And then his eyes land on me. I stop breathing. His eyes are clear, a pale, cold blue, and they are utterly analytic. They are not looking at a person, they are assessing an asset or a problem. My breath hitches. I know that face. It's from the single, faded photograph my mother kept buried at the bottom of her jewelry box. The one she only ever looked at when she thought I was asleep. Right before she would close the box and her face would harden, Miles Rowan, the logistics billionaire, the ghost, my grandfather. He takes 3 steps toward me. His shoes are polished black leather, and they make no sound on the oil-stained concrete. He stops just out of arm's reach, close enough for me to smell the faint, clean scent of starch and expensive soap. He doesn't look at my sign. He looks directly into my eyes. "Harper Phillips," he says. His voice is quiet, a low gravel. It's not a question, it's a statement of fact. It cuts through the background roar of the highway like a scalpel. I flinch. No one uses my full name. I clutch Toby's leash, my knuckles turning white. Toby, sensing the shift in my posture, lets out a low, uncertain growl. My grandfather's gaze doesn't waver. His eyes drop from my face to my left hand, which is braced on my knee, the cardboard sign resting against my leg. That scar, he says, his voice still that same measured, unhurried tone, on your wrist. A thin white line from falling off the retaining wall by the creek when you were 6. You needed 4 stitches. Your mother was worried it would get infected. My blood runs cold. I instinctively try to pull my sleeve down, but the t-shirt is too short. It's a faint mark, barely visible, a memory I've almost forgotten. I've never told anyone that story. My mother was the only person in the world who was there. It was the day before she packed our bags, the day before we left and never looked back, the day before my father, Evan, ceased to exist. Before I can speak, before I can even process the invasive, terrifying intimacy of him knowing that secret, he gives a short, sharp nod to the driver. The driver is at my side in an instant, silent as the car. He's holding out a thick brown paper bag. The smell hits me first. Yeast, warm bread, and something savory. The driver doesn't look at me. He just places the bag in my hand. It's heavy, and it's warm. Inside, I see a bottle of water already sweating condensation. Beneath it, a sandwich wrapped in butcher paper, so hot the paper is dark with grease. And under that, a small, white, steaming towel. Eat first, Miles Rowan says. We can talk after. I should throw it back in his face. I should scream at him, where were you for 22 years? Where were you when my mother was working double shifts? Where were you when she got sick? But I am so hungry. And Toby, smelling the food, whines and pushes his nose against the bag. My pride, the last thing I thought I had, simply evaporates. It isn't a decision, it's a surrender. My hands trembling, I unwrap the sandwich. It's roast beef, thick cut. I tear off a piece of the bread. It's real. I give a piece to Toby, who devours it in one gulp. I tear into the rest like an animal. The bread is soft, the meat is salty, and I've never tasted anything better. I am halfway through the bottle of water before he speaks again. He watches me, that same unnerving stillness in his posture. He doesn't ask the questions I expected, not what happened, or why are you here, or do you need money. He asks something else entirely. They did a thorough job, he says. He glances at my worn-out sneakers, the ones with the hole in the toe, and at the backpack that holds everything I own. Tell me, how exactly were you made redundant? Redundant, not homeless, not a failure, not a charity case. Redundant like a line item in a budget cut, like an unnecessary component in a complex machine. The word is so cold, so corporate, and so devastatingly precise. It hits a nerve deep inside me, a nerve that has been dormant for years, a nerve that connects directly to my spine. My guard, momentarily lowered by the food, snaps back up. How did you find me? I demand. My voice is rough, but it's stronger now. Who told you I'd be here? He doesn't answer. He just glances up over my shoulder toward the roof of the convenience store. I follow his gaze. The black, smoked plastic dome of the gas station's CCTV camera, high on the corner of the building, swivels. It's not a smooth, automated pan. It stops, adjusts by a single degree, and aims directly at us. My skin crawls. A sudden, cold prickle of paranoia. I scan the area. It's not just the CCTV. On the tall blue sign listing the gas prices, mounted on one of the support poles, I see it. A tiny black lens, no bigger than a pen tip, glinting in the midday sun. This isn't a chance meeting. This isn't fate. My office is nearby, Miles says, ignoring my discovery, ignoring the cameras he clearly controls. 10 minutes, that's all I ask. We can talk in private. He gestures to the open door of the limousine. The interior is a cave of plush, dark leather and polished wood. It looks cool. It looks safe. It looks like a trap. I can't, I say. The refusal is automatic. I gesture down at Toby, who is now sitting politely, sensing the tension, but still hoping for more bread. I'm not leaving him, for the first time since he stepped out of the car. Miles Rowan's expression changes. It's not a smile, not even close, but the hard lines around his eyes soften by a fraction as he looks at the dog. I'm aware, he says. He nods toward the car. Both of you. I hesitate for one more second. I look at the cracked pavement. I look at the endless, roaring highway. What are my options? Stay here and wait for the sun to set. Wait for the gas station manager to call the cops. The sandwich is gone. The water is half empty. I have nothing left to lose but my name, and it feels like this man already owns a piece of that. I grab my backpack, slide the strap over one aching shoulder, and loop Toby's leash tight around my wrist. Okay, I say. 10 minutes. The driver holds the door. The moment I slide onto the buttery leather, the world outside vanishes. The asterisk-ding asterisk of the pump, the roar of the trucks, the oppressive, sticky heat, all of it is gone. It's like being submerged in water. The air inside is cool, perfectly still, and smells faintly of leather and ozone. The door closes with a heavy, pressurized thud. Silence. The limo pulls onto the highway with an impossible smoothness. I feel no bumps, hear no engine. I'm sitting across from my grandfather. Toby, overwhelmed by the sudden blast of air conditioning and the soft carpet, turns around twice and curls up at my feet, instantly asleep. As we accelerate, a high-definition screen set into the partition in front of us flickers to life. It's not a movie. It's not the news. It's a data file. My face is at the top, Harper Phillips, 28. Below it, data streams, cold and factual, my last 3 addresses, all rentals with dates of eviction, my employment history for the last 5 years, every part-time gig at every diner and coffee shop with reasons for termination, my credit score. A 3-digit number so low it's almost impressive. And then, a file I don't recognize, a medical history, not mine. My mother's, Nora Phillips, her prescriptions, her hospital visits, her final diagnosis, the outstanding bills. What is this? I whisper, my voice trembling with a new kind of rage. You're spying on me. You've been spying on my mother. Miles Rowan doesn't look at the screen. He looks at me. His eyes are like polished granite. I did not find you, Harper, he says, his voice level, each word precise. Finding you would have been simple. No, I was tracking the people who erased you from this family. I was tracking my son. He leans forward just an inch. The space in the limo suddenly feels very small. They've been using you, Harper. Using your name, your absence, your very existence, as a shield, as a ghost account. The question isn't why you're at a gas station. The question is why they put you there. I stare at him, the man I've only seen in a photograph, the billionaire, the ghost. He didn't offer me charity. He didn't offer me pity. He offered me a motive. I gripped Toby's leash, the nylon cutting into my palm. My hunger is gone. My exhaustion is gone. They've been replaced by something else, something cold and sharp and terribly clear. For the first time in my life, someone wasn't asking me what I had done wrong. They were asking who had wronged me. I take a deep breath of the cold, filtered air. I'll take this ride, I say. I'll listen to this man, because for once, someone asked the right question. The limo didn't stop at a grand entrance. It didn't announce itself. It slipped beneath the Charlotte skyline, descending into a private subterranean garage. The silence of the car was replaced by the faint, sterile hum of ventilation. The driver opened my door. The headquarters of Rowan Freight Works was not a building, it was a fortress of glass and brushed steel. It smelled of nothing, which is its own kind of expensive. It smelled like filtered air and quiet, ruthless efficiency. Miles led the way. His gait was steady, and he didn't look back to see if I was following. He knew I was. Toby's paws made a small asterisk click, click, click asterisk on the polished stone floor, the only sound that proved we were real. We passed rows of silent, focused employees in a vast open-plan office. No one looked up. Not at the billionaire founder, and certainly not at the woman in dirty jeans and a stained t-shirt holding a dog's leash. We were ghosts. Miles bypassed the main elevators, using a private one that required his thumbprint. The ride was silent, smooth, and ended in a narrow, windowless room that felt more like a bank vault's viewing chamber than a conference room. The air was cold. Sit, he said. It wasn't a request. I sat in a heavy leather chair. Toby, sensing the tension, curled up at my feet, his body pressed hard against my ankle. Miles didn't sit. He stood in front of the far wall, which was covered by a single, massive laminated chart. It was a family tree, the Rowan family. It was a complex diagram of marriages, offspring, and corporate titles. I saw his name at the top, Miles Rowan, chairman. I saw names branching off, aunts, uncles, cousins, all with titles, chief financial officer, head of acquisitions, board member. Then I found my father, Evan Rowan, vice president of special projects. A line extended from his name, connecting to a marriage, but it didn't connect to a person. It connected to a blank white empty box. Nora Phillips, my mother. She had been reduced to a vacant space, a structural necessity to produce the next name in the line. And there, branching down from that empty box, was me, Harper Phillips. My name was there, but it was in a different font. It was grayed out, marginalized, just like he'd said. She was never good enough, I whispered. The words soured in my mouth. I was just repeating what my mother had told me in moments of weary honesty, never good enough for the Rowan name. No, Miles said, his back still to me. She was never good enough for him. He turned. His face was granite. I never met you, Harper. Because your father cut me out. He didn't just leave, he erased. He told me Nora was a grifter, that she had taken a payout to disappear. He changed your name, he said, to spite her, to sever the link. He built a fiction. It was convincing. I flinched. A payout. My mother had worked double shifts at a 24-hour diner until her back gave out. We never saw a dime. He lied. Yes, Miles said. He lied. But the lie served his purpose. It kept me away. It kept everyone away until he made a tactical error. The money, I said, remembering his words from the car. The money, he confirmed. 3 years ago, your father was overseeing a joint project with a partner company, a new distribution hub. He got greedy. He began skimming. Not from me. He was too clever for that. He stole from them, funneling nearly $2 million from the project budget into shell companies. The sums were so large they didn't feel real. So you had to cover it to avoid a scandal. Yes, I paid the money back. Quietly, I made our partner whole, but I also, for the first time, turned my investigators on my own son. If he would steal from a partner, he would steal from me. I needed to know where every dollar had gone. He walked to the long, polished table and placed his hands on it. The investigation was thorough. It took months. And in the weeds, they found a pattern. A series of small, strange financial moves. Insignificant, really. A few credit cards opened and maxed out. A small personal loan defaulted. Chump change, but it didn't match Evan's profile. The investigators traced the applications. He paused, and his cold blue eyes met mine. They were all under your name. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. The applications for apartments, I whispered. The job I almost got, the background check. All denied, Miles finished for me. You were flagged as high risk, delinquent accounts, a credit score in the low 400s. Your father used you. He used your name, your clean slate, your very absence, to create a financial smokescreen, a place to test a system, a place to hide debt. He made you a ghost and then he haunted his own house with your name. I felt sick. The roast beef sandwich churned in my stomach. All those times I had sat in barren rental offices, feeling the sting of humiliation as the manager's face tightened. Sorry, the system says no. It wasn't the system. It was my father. I can't. Yes, you can, he said, his voice sharp. He slid a thin manila folder across the table. It glided silently, stopping perfectly in front of me. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was all there, a copy of an audit report, page after page of bank statements for cards I had never seen, mailed to post office boxes I had never visited. And then, the emails. He had printed the emails, requests to a third-party credit service. The signature on each one was the same, EV. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just the initials, it was the way he signed. My mother had kept one of his old notebooks, a relic from a life I never knew. He always made his E with an arrogant, oversized loop. He always used a sharp, almost violent period at the end of a sentence. This was him. It was his digital fingerprint. I pushed the folder away, the papers scattering. I have to go. I stood up so fast the chair scraped back, a loud, ugly sound in the quiet room. I grabbed Toby's leash. I had to get out. I couldn't breathe this filtered air. And go where? Miles's voice cut through my panic. Back to the gas station. If you leave this room, Harper, you are still the person in that file. He will continue to use your name like a public utility. Like a wallet he found on the street. I froze at the door, my hand on the handle. A wallet. Redundant. He was right. Leaving changed nothing. Leaving meant I was still the girl with the cardboard sign. What do you want from me? My voice was a low growl. He slid two things onto the table. A black, featureless burner phone and a thick, anonymous prepaid credit card. This is an advance, he said. Enough for a decent hotel, new clothes for you and the dog. The phone is for me. You have 48 hours. If you agree to my terms, I will teach you step by step how to take your name back. I will give you the legal firepower to strip those defaults from your file and pin them on the man who put them there. I looked at the phone. I looked at the card. This wasn't charity. This was an invoice. What's the catch? I said. The condition. This weekend, the family is gathering for a reconciliation dinner, he said. Your father and his wife are hosting. Lena. I spat the name of the woman who had replaced my mother. Lena, he affirmed with no expression. They are all coming. Your aunts, your cousins, they all want something. They smell weakness. They think Evan's scandal has made me vulnerable, and they want their piece. You will attend as my star witness. No, he said, and a flicker of something, a cold, calculating satisfaction, entered his eyes. You will attend as the person they think you are, the girl from the gas station, the failed, forgotten daughter. You will play the part, as they say. You will come asking for a handout. You will be exactly what your father told them you were. Why? I demanded. For your amusement. To humiliate him. Because your presence, Harper, is a key. Years ago, after your mother left, I had a clause entered into the Rowan family trust, a legacy clause. It was designed to protect any heir who was marginalized or disinherited by another. It can only be activated by the physical, in-person attendance of that specific heir, who must then prove they are of sound mind and acting of their own free will. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. He doesn't know it exists. None of them do. They think they erased you. They have no idea that your arrival is the trigger for a provision that will change the entire structure of this family. I stood there, the weight of his words pressing down on me. He wasn't just offering me a way out, he was offering me a weapon. I walked back to the table, my shadow stretching long in the cool, artificial light. I ignored the credit card. I picked up the burner phone. It was heavy, solid, and cold. I don't care about your money, I said, my voice finally steady. I don't want your trust fund. I'm not offering it, he replied. I'm doing this for my name, I said, meeting his gaze. I'm doing it to clear my mother's. He won't use us as ghosts anymore. A small, almost imperceptible nod. Good. That is the correct motivation. The car is waiting. It will take you to a hotel that accepts dogs. I will call this phone in 47 hours with instructions for the dinner. I turned and walked out of the room, Toby at my heel. I didn't look back at the family tree on the wall. I didn't need to. I already knew my place. I wasn't the disinherited daughter. I was the secret clause, the one they never saw coming. The 48 hours were a lifetime. The anonymous upscale hotel room was a beige, silent purgatory. I used the prepaid card for 2 pairs of simple black trousers, 3 button-down shirts, new sneakers, and a waterproof jacket. The clothes felt like a costume. I bought Toby the most expensive dog food on the shelf. He ate, slept on the plush hotel carpet, and seemed to be the only one of us who understood what to do with unearned luxury. I stared at the black burner phone, willing it to ring, dreading it. It was a dead weight in my pocket, a constant reminder that I was no longer just drifting. I was anchored to a plan I did not fully understand, a key about to be forced into a lock I had never seen. When it finally buzzed at exactly the 47th hour, I snatched it up. 7 o'clock, Miles's voice said. No greeting. A car will be at your curb. The ledger room. They will be expecting you. The line went dead. The ledger room wasn't a restaurant. It was a statement tucked into a renovated 19th century bank building. It was the kind of place with no sign, only a single, impeccably dressed man standing by a carved oak door. The lobby was all marble and dark wood, with ceilings so high they seemed to trap the silence. The car, another silent black sedan, had dropped me at the curb. I walked in, my backpack over one shoulder, holding Toby's leash. He trotted beside me, his nails clicking a tiny, living protest against the sterile grandeur. A maître d', with a face like a disapproving hawk, glided toward me. I'm afraid this is a private club. I'm here for the Rowan party, I said. His eyes flicked to my backpack, then dropped to Toby. We do not allow pets. His voice was polite, but his meaning was clear, you are not allowed. He's with me, I said, my voice flat. I'm afraid that is not possible. Is there a problem, Julian? A new voice, older and smoother, came from the shadows. A man in a Brioni suit. The manager stepped into the light. He looked at me, then at Toby, and his professional smile never wavered. He turned to the maître d' and said, his voice just loud enough for me to hear, Mr. Rowan has booked the entire floor. If his guest wishes to bring a cheetah, you will find it a bowl of water. He turned to me. Miss Phillips, your party is waiting in the vault. The maître d' looked like he'd swallowed a wasp. I just nodded and followed him to a massive circular steel vault door that stood open, leading into a private dining room. They were all there, seated around a table of polished dark mahogany. They looked like a portrait of casual inherited wealth. My father, Evan, sat near the head of the table. He looked older than I remembered, softer, but his eyes were the same, quick, restless, and right now actively avoiding me. Beside him sat Lena. She was beautiful, blonde, and dressed in a cream-colored silk dress. She offered me a smile so tight and virtuous it was an insult. Evan, darling, she said, her voice a soft southern drawl, your daughter is here. My father finally looked at me. His face was a mask of strange geniality. Harper, you made it. Evan, I said. I did not call him Dad. The word felt foreign and wrong in my mouth. An uncle I vaguely recognized, with a face flushed from wine, BMED, well, look at this. The prodigal returns. Aaron, you didn't tell us she was back in the fold. Just reconnecting, my father stammered. A younger man, my cousin, tapped his phone. Speaking of the fold, check this out. He slid his phone across the table, showing off a picture of a gleaming white yacht. The Ethel just took her out of dry dock. You should see the galley, Uncle Evan. It's all Italian marble. We are looking at a new property. A woman with Lena's hard, polished edges, my aunt chimed in, ignoring me completely. It's a startup, angel investors. You know, a fantastic opportunity for family money. Miles has to be looking for new ventures. I stood there holding Toby's leash, the ghost at the feast. I was the dirt they were trying not to see, the inconvenient guest who had just walked in. Well, for God's sake, sit down, child, my aunt said, gesturing to the single empty chair at the far end of the table, as far from the head as possible. As I moved to the chair, Lena's voice, sharp as glass, cut through the room. The dog? Really? I stopped. I looked at her. The manager said it was fine. This is the ledger room, not a kennel, my Uncle Robert grumbled. Miles allows this. And as if summoned by his name, the man himself walked in. Miles Rowan was exactly 5 minutes late. It was a calculated delay. He had given them the time, the space, and the opportunity to reveal exactly who they were. The atmosphere in the room snapped to attention. Father, Evan said, rising. Miles, Lena cooed, her hand on his arm. He ignored them. His pale blue eyes scanned the room, taking in the scene. He saw my uncle's wine glass, my cousin's phone, Lena's proprietary hand on Evan's shoulder, and my father's averted gaze. Then he looked at me, at the empty chair, and at Toby, who sat politely at my feet. He gave a single, satisfied nod. Good. You're all here, he said, taking the head of the table. The dinner was a masterpiece of tension. The service was silent, the food exquisite, and the conversation was a performance. My aunt and uncle probed for information on the family fund. My cousin talked about his yacht, and my father and Lena played the part of the gracious, stable center of the family. I said nothing. I ate, I watched, and I held Toby's leash. I was the bomb in the middle of the table, and they were all pretending they couldn't hear the ticking. When the main course, a perfect rack of lamb, was served. Miles held up a hand. The server stopped, then retreated. Before we continue, he said, his voice cutting through the polite murmur. He reached into his jacket and produced a stack of long, cream-colored envelopes. I find myself in a reflective mood. He slid one envelope in front of each person. A new family fund is being structured, he said. The old ways are insufficient, but a seat at the table must be earned. Not just inherited. My Uncle Robert chuckled. What's this, Miles? A pop quiz. A character test, Miles said. The words dropped into the room like ice. Pass, and you will have a voice in the new fund. Fail, and you will not. The room was utterly silent. My cousin had stopped looking at his phone. Open the first card, Miles said. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single, heavy card. Printed on it in stark black letters was a question. Robert, you first, Miles said. Read the question aloud and answer it. My uncle cleared his throat. Question 1, he read, his voice losing its boom. Tell of a time you paid off someone else's debt without expecting repayment. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. I could hear the clink of my father's fork as he nervously set it down. Robert's face flushed a deeper red. He looked at his wife, she looked at the ceiling. Well, Robert began, there's business debt. Of course, we absorb that. In acquisitions. No, Miles said. Not a business transaction, a personal debt, an act of grace. Anyone? He looked around the table, at my aunt, who was suddenly fascinated by her water glass, at Lena, whose perfect smile was frozen, at my father, who was staring at his own empty envelope. No one spoke. I see, Miles said. He did not sound surprised. Very well, Miles said. The second question. My cousin, perhaps thinking he could do better, picked up his card. If the family assets, all of them, were to drop by 70% tomorrow, what one thing would you fight to keep? A different kind of silence fell, a calculating one. The Ethel, my cousin said, almost too quickly. The yacht. It's not just an asset, it's a statement. It holds its value. The wine collection, my uncle said, a hedge against inflation, a tangible asset. The ski lodge in Aspen, my aunt said, the land value alone. It's a legacy for the children. One by one, they named their things, their possessions, their hedges, and their assets. They were dividing a corpse that wasn't even dead. Then the table fell silent. Every eye turned to me. I was the last one. And you, Harper? Miles asked, his voice neutral. I looked down at my card. I thought about the gas station. I thought about the eviction notice. I thought about my mother's empty jewelry box. My job and my honor, I said. The words hung in the air, simple, stark, and utterly out of place. My cousin snorted. My aunt rolled her eyes. And my father, Evan, let out a short, sharp laugh, a laugh of pure, dismissive scorn. Honor, he said, as if it were a word in a language he'd never learned. That's cute. Miles Rowan did not laugh. He didn't even smile. He simply reached into his jacket pocket again, and retrieved a thin folder, not a manila folder like the one he had given me. This one was bound in dark blue leather. He placed it on the table, and with one finger slid it across the polished wood. It stopped directly in front of my father's plate. What's this? Evan said, his laugh dying in his throat. A list, Miles said. Of the times you used her name to take out loans, the credit cards, the post office boxes, the delinquent accounts. Lena's hand flew to my father's arm. Evan, what is he talking about? Her voice was a sharp, panicked whisper. That's ridiculous. It must be a mistake. A mistake, my father repeated, trying to regain his footing. Yes, father. This is an accounting error. It's a misunderstanding. Miles looked at Lena. A mistake, you say? He snapped his fingers. It was so sharp, so sudden, it made me jump. A section of the dark wood-paneled wall behind Miles slid away, revealing a massive high-definition screen. It lit up, illuminating the dark room, casting their shocked faces in a cold blue light. On the screen was an email and a digital signature, EV. The E with its arrogant loop, the sharp, violent period. The IP address on these requests, Miles said as the screen changed to show a map, traces back to your home office, Evan. The digital signatures match your personal tablet. The dates, the screen filled with a timeline. A timeline that matched every fraudulent application. Lena's face went white. My father looked like he'd been punched. My uncle and aunt were staring, their greed momentarily forgotten, replaced by a new, sharper hunger, the scent of a rival's blood. Miles Rowan rose slowly from his chair, placing his napkin on the table. Tonight was not a reconciliation, he said, his voice quiet, but it filled the vault. It was a character audit. He looked at Evan, at Lena, and at the rest of them, frozen in the blue light of the screen. You have all failed. The blue light from the screen painted their faces in grotesque shades of disbelief. My Uncle Robert, who had been so boastful about his wine, now looked like a man who had swallowed poison. Lena's mask of virtue had cracked, her mouth slightly open, her eyes darting between the screen and my father. Evan, my father, was a statue. He was staring at the digital copy of his own signature, a signature that had just become a confession. Failed, my aunt finally sputtered, her voice a panicked sound. Failed what, Miles? A ridiculous parlor game. What is this? It was, Miles said, his voice calm, a diagnostic, and the diagnosis is terminal. You can't do this, Evan finally roared, slamming his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. You can't just put me on trial. This is a family matter. No, Miles said, his voice dropping, but it cut through my father's anger like a razor. When you used company funds to cover your theft, it became a corporate matter. When you used her name, he nodded at me, it became a legal matter. And when you did it while sitting in a house I paid for, it became my matter. He turned his body slightly, a subtle shift that excluded them, and, for the first time, included me. None of you, he said, scanning the table, seemed to understand the questions. You were asked about paying a debt. You were asked about what you would save. He looked at me. She was the only one who answered correctly. Honor. A concept you've all bartered away so you could keep your tangible assets. He let that hang in the air. The silence was absolute. And her answer, he continued, coupled with her presence, has done something remarkable. It has triggered a provision. A key left in the lock for over 2 decades has just been turned. What provision? My father demanded. What are you talking about? I am talking, Miles said, about the legacy clause. The name meant nothing to them. It was just a phrase. But the way he said it, with a finality, a weight, it made the hair on my arm stand up. I had my attorneys drafted the month after Nora left, Miles said, his gaze settling on my father again. The month you told me she had run off with a payout. The month you began the erasure. It was a moment of clarity for me, Miles continued. I realized that the line between ambition and pathology in this family was dangerously thin. My Uncle Robert leaned forward. A clause. What clause? I've seen the trust documents, Miles. There's nothing. This is not in the trust. Miles interrupted, silencing him. This is a key to the trust. A failsafe. It was designed specifically to protect any direct heir who was, he quoted the document, financially or socially marginalized by the manipulative actions of another family member. It was written for her. Even if I didn't know her name, it was written for her. Lena laughed, a high, nervous sound. This is insane. You're making this up. I? Miles said. The clause has two triggers. The first, the physical presence of the marginalized heir. The second, a verbal declaration in the presence of the family that they choose honor over financial gain. His laugh, he nodded at my father, was the final seal. The clause is now pending. Pending what? My cousin asked, his voice suddenly small. Pending activation, Miles said. Upon successful activation, the legacy clause grants the heir two things. First, full and autonomous control of the Rowan Community Fund. The Community Fund, my aunt scoffed. That's your charity project. Your little social thing. It's nothing. It is a $200 million social impact endowment, Miles said, his voice flat. It is the entire moral and public-facing soul of this company, and it is 10% of the non-voting shares of Rowan Freight Works held in trust to fund it. The room exploded. 10%. Robert was on his feet. You're giving 10% of the company to her. She's a child. She's a vagrant. My aunt shrieked. Control, Miles corrected them, his voice rising, cutting through their panic. Not ownership. Control. The power to direct its funds, the power to sit on the board, the power to vote those shares in the selection of community directors. My father was pale, a waxy, terrified white. He understood this wasn't about money. It was about power. Sheer, unadulterated structural power. But Miles held up a hand, and the chaos subsided. It is not yet activated, I said. Pending, Miles confirmed. There is a second lock, a final test. He looked at me. The full analytic force of his gaze fell on me. The legacy clause was written for an heir of integrity. The final lock, therefore, is a test of it. The heir has 90 days, he stated, 90 from tonight. In that time, they must prove, legally and financially, that their name is free and clear. They must, in effect, demonstrate their honor by cleansing their own record. He paused, and then he turned slowly to look at my father. She must clear every fraudulent debt, every delinquent account, every stain that has been put on her name by someone else. The connection was a flash of lightning in the room. I saw it. I saw all of them see it. He wasn't just giving me a key. He was forcing me to use the very crimes Evan had committed against me as the tool to unlock it. My father hadn't just given me a motive, he had given me the final necessary piece of the puzzle. He had set his own trap. How? I whispered, my first word since the questions. How do I do that? Miles's gaze snapped back to me. All business. It is a clear legal path, and you will walk it. Tomorrow morning, you will file a formal identity theft report with the Charlotte police. You will then, with our legal counsel, file a comprehensive declaration with the Federal Trade Commission. From there, we open formal, notarized disputes with all three major credit bureaus. We will provide them with the evidence from the police report and the FTC filing. He took a breath. Simultaneously, my forensic accounting team, the same team that found his transgressions, will launch a full trace on every dollar. They will follow the money from the initial loan through the shell companies, and they will place the liability firmly and publicly at the source. They will prove you were the victim. He nodded at Evan. He will be made legally and financially responsible for every cent. He steepled his fingers, the commander on the hill watching the battle plan unfold. The stakes are simple. If you fail, if at midnight on the 90th day, there is a single black mark left on your record, the legacy clause locks itself permanently, and this opportunity is gone forever. And if I succeed? I asked. If you succeed, Miles said, the clause unlocks permanently. The shares are transferred. The fund is yours. And no one in this room, not my son, not my board, not even myself, can ever ever veto your decisions. The room was frozen. It was no longer a dinner party, it was a courtroom. It was an execution. They were all finally seeing me, not as the girl with the sign, not as Evan's dirty secret, but as a legal mechanism, a fail-safe, a bomb that had been ticking under their table for 22 years. And my father's own greed had just lit the fuse. They were all waiting for me to ask about the money, waiting for me to ask how much. I took a deep breath. I thought about my mother. I thought about the eviction notice. I thought about a name that was not mine. What is the first step? I asked. A smile. It wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. It was the thin, cold, reptilian smile of a man who has just seen a 50-year plan click into place. It was a smile of pure, terrifying victory. The first step, Miles said, is tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. You will be working at Northbridge Compliance. It is our internal auditing and compliance division. It is rigorous. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You will report directly to me. My father, who had been silent, a ghost at his own execution, made a sound, a low choking sound. It was a laugh, but it was dead. She can't, he mumbled, shaking his head, looking at his plate. She's not like you, old man. She's not ruthless enough to survive a day in that world. I picked up my backpack from the floor. I zipped it, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. I looked at my father for the first time, not as the man I had longed for, not as the ghost in my mother's past, but as a defendant. I don't need to be ruthless, Evan, I said. His name tasted like ash. I just need to be accurate. I pulled on Toby's leash. Come on, boy. I turned my back on all of them, on the table, on the food, on the shocked white faces. I walked out of the vault, out of the restaurant, and into the cool night air. I left them all to drown in the cold, blue light of the truth. The 90 days began not with a bang, but with the scrape of a cheap pen on a government form. Day 1, 8 a.m. I wasn't at Northbridge Compliance. I was at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Precinct, sitting on a hard plastic bench under the buzz of fluorescent lights. The air smelled of stale coffee and desperation. A lawyer from Rowan's team, a sharp woman named Alistair, sat beside me, her briefcase on her lap. She didn't speak. She just pointed to the line where I needed to sign. I, Harper Phillips, do solemnly swear that the following statements are true. I signed my name. I was officially, on paper, a victim. The officer who took the report didn't look up. To him, I was just another file, another piece of grim paperwork. But as I pushed the affidavit under the glass, I felt the first tiny click of the mechanism. I had set the first pin. Now, the bureaus, Alistair said in the car, handing me a digital voice recorder. You will call all three. You will state your name, your case number from the police report, and you will read from the script we provided. The next 3 days were a special kind of hell. I sat in the temporary apartment Miles had arranged clean, white, empty with the burner phone and the voice recorder. I was on hold for a cumulative total of 9 hours. I listened to tinny classical music. I was told my call was very important by a machine, over and over, while my father's crime sat on my name like a tumor. Yes, I understand, I repeated again and again to faceless operators in call centers thousands of miles away. I am disputing this account. The file number is, yes. I will hold. While on hold, I worked. My new office at Northbridge Compliance was a glass-walled cube on the 42nd floor with a direct view of the city I had been begging in just days before. My job was simple. I was an auditor's assistant, but my only project was my own life. The forensic team had given me access to everything, my own bank records, my father's, Lena's, the partner companies, and the shell company, Atrium Ridge LLC. Look for the pattern, Miles had said in our one brief meeting. He hadn't come to my desk. I had been summoned. Evan is lazy. He thinks he's brilliant, which means he's a creature of habit. Find the habit. So I looked. I spread my own life out on the conference table like an autopsy. My pay stubs from the diner, printed from my email. My bank statements showing the $20 tips, the $40 cash withdrawals. And then the fraud, a $3,000 cash advance, a $5,000 personal loan. All on dates I was working. How do you prove you weren't there? Alistair asked, reviewing my file. I closed my eyes, trying to go back. The day of the loan, a Tuesday. We were busy. It was Maria's birthday. I stopped. I dived for my old, cracked phone. I scrolled back through 2 years of photos, and there it was, a grainy, blurry photo. Me in my diner uniform, holding a slice of cheesecake with a single candle. Maria smiling beside me. The timestamp was in the corner, 10:37 a.m. According to the loan application, I was supposedly signing papers at a check cashing place 20 miles across town at that exact moment. We will notarize this, Alistair said, her voice devoid of emotion. Good work. The next piece of the puzzle came from the compliance team. We got a hit on the IP, a young, terrifyingly smart analyst told me, not looking up from his 3 monitors. The loan applications, the first credit card, they all originated from the same IP address. We subpoenaed the internet service provider. And I asked. He paused and then he said, the IP is registered to this address. He slid a piece of paper toward me. It was my father's address, his house, the house he shared with Lena. His defense will be that you lived there, that you had access. Alistair warned me. I haven't set foot in that house in my entire life, I said. I went back to the rundown apartment complex I'd been evicted from. I found my old landlord, Mr. Henderson. He was watering a dead patch of grass, and he scowled when he saw me. I told you, Ms. Phillips, the deposit. I'm not here for the deposit, Mr. Henderson. I handed him a letter from Rowan's legal department. It was polite, but it carried the weight of a freight train. It requested a signed, notarized letter confirming my lease dates, my rental payments, and my employment hours as listed on my application. He looked at the letterhead. He looked at me. His scowl faded, replaced by a new, grudging curiosity. I guess I can do that, he said. I got the letter. It was another pin in the lock. Next, the signatures. I sat in a sterile room with a handwriting analyst. He placed 20 blank sheets of paper in front of me. Sign your name, he said. Now again. Now, Harper Phillips. Now, H. Phillips. Now the initials, EV, EV. Your father's digital signature on the emails was EV. We need to prove that not only did you not write it, but it bears no resemblance to your own hand. Now sign EV as if you were in a hurry. I signed over and over until my hand cramped. The expert collected the sheets, his face unreadable. Thank you. We will compare these to the electronic keystroke data from your father's tablet. While I was dismantling the identity theft, I was also being educated. My days were spent tracing the other theft. The $2 million from the partner project. I learned to read wire transfers. I learned what a shell company's articles of incorporation looked like. Lena's name was on everything, Atrium Ridge LLC. Its address was a post office box. Its registered agent was a firm in Delaware that specialized in making companies disappear. But the money hadn't disappeared. I tracked it from the partner project to Atrium Ridge, and then out in dozens of small, seemingly random payments. A payment to a yacht broker in Florida, a payment to a jeweler in Aspen, a payment to an interior design firm. I was staring at my cousin's yacht. I was staring at my aunt's ski lodge. My father hadn't just stolen the money, he had distributed it. He had bought their silence. He had paid for their loyalty with stolen cash. They weren't just greedy, they were accessories. My weekends were my sanctuary. The sterile apartment was too quiet. The glass tower too cold. I took Toby to a public park, away from the polished marble of uptown. I bought a cheap training clicker and a bag of treats. I taught him to sit, to stay, to come when called. He was a rescue. He was anxious, always flinching at loud noises, always worried I was going to leave. I understood. Stay, I would say, walking 10 feet away. He would whine, his whole body trembling, but he would hold. Good boy, I'd say, clicking the clicker, and he would bound toward me, all joy and relief. Those small, simple acts of trust were the only things that felt real. In a world of digital signatures, shell companies, and legal affidavits, Toby was the one true thing. I wasn't just training him, we were training each other. We were learning how to stay, how to trust that the other person would come back. We were holding each other steady. The days blurred into weeks. 60, 70, 80. The first credit bureau. Experian cleared my file on day 74. A cold, automated email, your dispute has been resolved. One black mark vanished. TransUnion followed on day 82, but Equifax held. We are reviewing the documentation. Day 85. Day 87. Day 88. Alistair was on the phone, her voice no longer calm. She was using words like statutory deadlines and imminent legal action. Day 89. The 90th day was tomorrow. The lock was still closed. I sat at my desk at Northbridge. My screen opened to my credit report. The red flag was still there, a $5,000 delinquent loan. My cursor hovered over the refresh button. I couldn't breathe. I clicked it. The page reloaded. My stomach dropped. The red flag was gone. The status had changed. Dispute resolved. Removed from file. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just felt empty. The fight was over. The hole in my name had been patched. I closed the browser. I packed my bag. I walked out of the glass tower, took the elevator down to the ground, and walked the 30 blocks to my apartment. I was halfway home, the sun setting, casting long shadows between the buildings, when the burner phone in my pocket buzzed. It was a text message from Miles, 2 words, lock open. I didn't reply. I put the phone back in my pocket. When I got to my apartment, I sat on the floor, and Toby put his head in my lap. I just stroked his ears for an hour. Later, I checked my corporate email. There was a new message, not from Miles, but from his executive assistant. It was a meeting invitation, a calendar invite for the quarterly board meeting, 2 days from now. And in the subject line, boardroom reckoning. My name was clean. The 90 days were over. The lock was open, but the wall was not. I had assumed the email invitation to the boardroom reckoning was the victory lap. I was wrong. It was the signal that the real battle was about to begin. The 90 days had just been qualifying. Miles summoned me the next morning, not to my glass cube at Northbridge, but to the 28th floor, the executive floor. It was a place I had not been since the day I arrived. It was silent, carpeted in thick grey wool, and smelled of old polished wood and ionized air. He was not in his office. He was in a small private conference room, standing before a massive smart screen. He didn't turn when I entered. "You did the work," he said, his voice quiet. "You scrubbed the ledger. You are, in the eyes of the law and the credit bureaus, clean." "Yes," I said. "That," he said, "was the first lock, your endurance. Now we test their greed and your strategy." He tapped the screen. A logo appeared. A stylized A and R intertwined over a green leaf. "Atrium Ridge LLC," I said, my blood running cold. "Lena's shell company, the one they used to move the $2 million. "The very same," Miles said. "A perfect vessel, legally registered, domiciled in Delaware, and currently completely empty. It has no assets, no debts. It is a blank slate as of an hour ago. It is also the investment vehicle for Rowan Freight Works' new green logistics initiative." A slick presentation appeared on the screen: charts, projections, eco-friendly cargo planes, electric long-haul trucks. "This is all fake," I said. "It is hypothetical," Miles corrected, a faint glimmer in his cold eyes. "But the prospectus is very real and very, very attractive, especially," he paused, "to those who feel their primary source of income and their place in the family hierarchy is about to be cut off." He didn't need to explain. The 90 days of my investigation, and the absolute silence from his office, had terrified them. They knew I had succeeded. They knew I had the old man's ear. They knew a reckoning was coming. They were desperate for a lifeline, and Miles was about to throw them an anchor. "Your father, your aunt, your cousin," Miles said, "they are rats in a maze of their own making. They are about to see their rivals invited to feast. A terrified rat will eat anything, even the poison." He held a brief, highly confidential video call that afternoon. He presented the Atrium Ridge opportunity. He did not invite Evan, Lena, or Robert. He invited their direct rivals within the company. He knew his family. The fastest way to spread information in the Rowan clan was to market a secret. It took less than 24 hours. I was back in my glass cube. Though now I had a new title, Special Projects Analyst, Office of the Chairman. It meant I was CC'd on every email. It meant I was the eyes. At 4 p.m., the first one came in. It was from my cousin, the one with the yacht. Subject: Atrium. Heard rumblings about the new green fund. Incredible. This is the future. I'm ready to move some capital. Need to know how to get in on the friends and family round. Let me know. An hour later, from my Uncle Robert, subject: a quick word. Miles. This Atrium initiative is exactly the kind of aggressive move I've been advocating for years. We must discuss my involvement. Perhaps a board seat on the new entity. And then, late at 10:17 p.m. The one that mattered. It was from Evan. My father. Subject: following up. Father, Lena, and I have inadvertently been made aware of the Atrium prospectus. We are impressed. This is the kind of forward thinking that built the company. We want in. We are prepared to commit a significant amount. This is a chance to put the misunderstandings of the past few months behind us. They were so hungry, so pathetic, so utterly predictable. Miles forwarded the entire chain to me. His only comment, a single line. Your move, Harper. This was it. This was the test. He wasn't just training me, he was auditioning me. I sat in my apartment. Toby had his head on my knee, his breathing slow and steady. I drafted the reply. I put all of them, Evan, Lena, Robert, my cousin, in the to field, Evan, Lena, Robert, Mark. Thank you for your collective enthusiasm. Grandfather is pleased you all see the potential in Atrium Ridge. This is, however, a high-leverage, high-risk initiative. It requires significant collateral to secure a position in this preliminary round. Given the recent audits, there are concerns about liquidity. I took a deep, shuddering breath. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I was playing the part they had assigned me my entire life, the fool, the tool, the wallet. I typed the final lines. My credit file is clean now. My name is in good standing. Perhaps I could use my name to stand as the financial guarantor for the family's joint position. Would that be an acceptable solution to move this forward? I hit send. The reply from Lena was so fast it was almost instantaneous. Subject, following up, Harper. That is so generous. What a wonderful idea, truly a way for all of us to heal, using your fresh start to help the family move forward. Evan agrees. We accept. Please have the lawyers draw up the papers. They accepted. They saw the name I had just spent 90 days scrubbing clean, and their first and only immediate instinct was to use it, to stain it, to leverage it for their own gain. The next morning, the contracts went out. They were not from Miles. They were from Alistair and the entire Rowan legal team. They won't read the fine print, Alistair said, her face a mask of professional calm. She placed the document on my desk. They will only see the buy-in price and the signature line. What's in the fine print? I asked, picking it up. Just a new clause we are testing. Section 11B. We are calling it the Guarantor Asset Protection Clause. It's very simple, really. It states that while the guarantor, that's you, agrees to secure the initial buy-in, no party to this agreement may ever, under any circumstances, now or in the future, access, leverage, or attach any other personal, professional, or inherited assets of the guarantor for any purpose, financial or otherwise. I read the clause. It was 3 paragraphs of dense, impenetrable legalese wrapped in boilerplate language about liability and third-party risk. It was a masterpiece. They will sign it, I said. Yes, Alistair said. They will. By noon, we had the digital signatures. Evan, Lena, Robert, Mark, all of them, in their hurry to get in on the fake deal, signing a binding legal contract that barred them from ever touching my assets again. The trap was set. The signatures were dry. Now, we just needed the crime. They've been given access to the atrium data room, Miles said, in our next brief meeting, a gesture of good faith. It contains the prospectus, the 5-year projections, the green tech patents, all hypothetical, of course, and all watermarked. I looked at the analyst from Northbridge, the one who had found the IP address. He was smiling. Watermarked how? I asked. Each document they download, the analyst said, his eyes bright, is digitally seeded. The watermark is invisible to the naked eye, but it's tied to the user who logged in. Each user has a unique code. Lena, for example, is LR. Evan is ER. Robert is RR. We just wait. We waited for 3 days. The data room was a flurry of activity, downloads, logins. On the morning of the 3rd day, the phone rang. It was the analyst. We have a hit. A financial blog, Freight Intel, had just published a new post, Rowan Freight Works' secret green fund exposed. Insiders say the post was full of proprietary information. It had screenshots of the financial projections, detailed, sensitive, hypothetical projections. It was a clear attempt to sabotage the family round, either by driving up outside investor interest, or by creating a public scandal. And there, on a chart detailing projected fuel savings, faint, almost invisible, but undeniable when magnified, were 2 letters, LR, Lena. I called Alistair. It's done, I said. I saw, she replied. The penalty clause is already being activated. So, they lose their investment. Oh, no, Alistair said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. They haven't invested any money yet. This isn't about money, Harper. This is about leverage. Read the other clause. Section 11C. Breach of confidentiality. She sent me the file. I read it. The penalty for breach was not financial, it was precise. Upon breach of confidentiality, I read aloud, my voice trembling just slightly, the signatory and their legal spouses, that's Evan and Lena, Alistair confirmed, are herewith permanently barred from engaging in any future financial partnership, guarantee, co-signature, or holding power of attorney with the individual known as Harper Phillips, as a protection against further compromised data. I put the paper down. They hadn't just lost the fake investment. They had been legally, permanently, and by their own hand, blocked from ever using me as a financial tool again. They had tried to use my name one last time, and in doing so, had signed a contract that forbade them from ever touching it. They had locked themselves out. The burner phone buzzed on my desk. A text from Miles. This is the second lock. I finally understood. The first lock, the 90 days, was my test of endurance. But this was the test of my strategy. He wasn't saving me, he was arming me. He wasn't giving me a fish, he was teaching me how to build a legal fortress and bait a trap. He was training me. That night, I went back to the sterile apartment. It was the first time in my adult life I felt safe. Not just physically safe, but structurally. My name was no longer a target. It was no longer a wallet. It was a fortress. And the drawbridge was up. I turned off the lights. Toby was already asleep at the foot of the bed. I lay down. And for the first time since my mother got sick, I didn't just pass out from exhaustion. I slept. The next morning, the sun was high. I woke up without an alarm. I felt rested. I made coffee. I took Toby for a long walk in the park. When I returned, I checked my corporate email. There was a single new message. It had been sent at 5 a.m. to the entire executive board. All division heads, my father, my uncle, Lena, and me. Subject, invitation quarterly board meeting. Location, boardroom, 28th floor. Time, 9 a.m. The boardroom on the 28th floor was a glass box of judgment. It was designed to have no shadows. The entire west wall was a single sheet of glass overlooking the grey, hazy expanse of Charlotte. The other walls were glass too, looking out into the hushed executive corridor. Inside, the only solid object was the table, a single, massive slab of black granite so polished it looked like a rift in space. At the head of that rift sat Miles Rowan. The room was split. On the left side of the table sat the family, my father, Evan, looking waxy and ill, his eyes red-rimmed. Lena beside him, wearing a severe navy blue suit, her blonde hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to hurt. My uncle Robert and my cousin Mark, who had been so boisterous at the dinner, were now utterly silent, staring at the blank data ports in front of them. They were a portrait of cornered, entitled Panic. On the right side of the table sat the professionals, the chief financial officer, a woman with iron grey hair, the chief operating officer. And at the far end, in the seat reserved for counsel, sat Alistair, her leather-bound portfolio open, 2 pens resting beside it. There was one empty seat beside Alistair. I walked in at 8:59. The digital clock on the wall, a simple, brutalist set of white numbers, read 8 hours 59 minutes and 15 seconds. I was wearing the uniform, black trousers, a white button-down shirt, a black blazer, the costume from the hotel. Now, my armor. I was not carrying a backpack. I was carrying a thin, leather-bound tablet. Toby was at the hotel with a sitter, whom I was paying for with my own salary. My father's head snapped up when I entered. His eyes widened. He had expected the girl from the gas station. He had not expected a member of the opposing team. I did not look at him. I did not look at any of them. I walked to the right side of the table, and took the empty seat beside Alistair. The clock on the wall clicked to 9 o'clock. Miles Rowan, who had not moved, spoke. His voice was not loud, but it was the only sound in the room. Good morning. This is a special session of the board. The minutes are being recorded. He gestured to a small, glowing red light on the microphone in the center of the table. We have 2 items on the agenda. The first is a notification of a change in governance. He looked not at me, but at the professional side of the table. I would like to introduce Ms. Harper Phillips. Every head turned. The professionals looked at me with analytic curiosity. My family with pure, unadulterated venom. Due to the triggering of a pre-existing trust provision known as the legacy clause, Miles continued, Harper, as of 91 days ago, became the pending administrator of the Rowan Community Fund. As of yesterday, all conditions of that clause were met. She is now the acting administrator. This is a matter of corporate record, as the fund holds 10% of the company's non-voting shares. Please join me in welcoming her. A few of the executives murmured a polite, confused welcome. Evan shot to his feet. The motion was so violent his chair scraped back with a sound like a scream. You can't do this. This is a private trust matter. It has no place at a board meeting. She has no authority here. This is a coup. Lena's hand was on his arm, trying to pull him down, but he was too far gone. Miles did not move. He simply looked at Alistair. Alistair stood up. She did not look at Evan. She addressed the board. Mr. Rowan is mistaken, she said, her voice a cold, precise monotone. The bylaws of this corporation, Article 4, Section 2, explicitly state that the administrator of the community fund holds an advisory and informational seat at all board meetings. The trust itself provided the mechanism for succession. The legacy clause was triggered. She paused. As Mr. Rowan knows, at a dinner 91 days ago, she continued, the only pending condition was the legal, documented, and verified clearance of Ms. Phillips's credit file from fraudulent debt, as of 0900 hours yesterday. Equifax, the final bureau, cleared her file. The condition is met. The trust's own mechanics are automatic. Ms. Phillips's authority is not a matter for debate. It is a fact. Please, Mr. Rowan, she finally looked at him. Sit down. Evan crumpled back into his chair, his face slick with sweat. He was trapped. Thank you, Ms. Alistair, Miles said. Which brings us to agenda item 2, the Atrium Ridge breach and a full audit of the community fund, which was performed by Northbridge Compliance at my request. He turned his gaze to me. Ms. Phillips, as the new administrator of the fund, perhaps you can present the findings. This was it. I stood up. I took my tablet and walked to the head of the table, to the lectern beside my grandfather. I did not look at him. I looked at the professionals, the CFO and the COO, the Real board, the people who mattered. I plugged my tablet in. The massive screen on the wall, which had been black, flickered to life. Good morning, I said. My voice, amplified by the small microphone, was calm. It didn't tremble. For the past 90 days, my team at Northbridge has been conducting a full forensic audit of the fund I am now tasked with managing. We were looking for the Atrium breach. We found other irregularities. I clicked to the first slide. It was a simple spreadsheet, unauthorized withdrawals, Rowan Community Fund. The fund, I said, is intended for scholarships, disaster relief, and community grants. We found, however, A series of withdrawals totaling over $2.3 million over the last 18 months, all personally approved by the previous VP of Special Projects, Mr. Evan Rowan. Evan Rowan. They were, I continued, coded as event advances and discretionary project spending. None of these events or projects exist. A sharp intake of breath from the CFO. That is a serious accusation, Ms. Phillips. It is a statement of fact, I replied, and clicked to the next slide. Slide 2, a flowchart. The money trail. The $2.3 million did not vanish, I said. It was transferred, in every single case, to one central holding company, Atrium Ridge LLC. Lena made a small, strangled sound. As the board is now aware, Atrium Ridge was the same shell company used in the Atrium data breach, I said, connecting the dots. This was not an outside entity. It was an inside tool, but the money did not stay there. I clicked again. Slide 3, distribution of funds from Atrium. The money was distributed, $1.1 million to a yacht brokerage in Miami, in payment for a vessel named the Ethel. My cousin Mark went white as a sheet. That was a loan. A family loan. The trail continued, I said, ignoring him. $700,000 to a real estate holding company in Aspen, and $400,000 to a New York-based art dealer. My Uncle Robert looked like he was going to be sick. My aunt, who was not on the board but sat behind him, looked faint. The community fund, I said, my voice cold, was being used as a private slush fund, a way to purchase assets and loyalty from other family members, all disguised as charity. This is an outrage, Robert bellowed. She's lying. This is slander. The wire transfers are all here, I said. Signed off by Ms. Lena Rowan, the registered agent of Atrium, and approved for transfer by Mr. Evan Rowan. I deny it, Evan shouted, half rising. This is faked. I would never. These were audit precautions. That's always to protect the fund from market exposure. An audit precaution. I repeated, my voice dropping. Thank you for that. It's a very specific and very telling turn of phrase. I clicked to the final slide. It was the email, the one from his laptop, the one with his EV signature, the one I had seen 92 days ago, use her name to open a few cards, just as an audit precaution. The entire room read it. The CFO put her glasses on and leaned forward. A clear pattern of behavior, I said. When he wanted to steal from a partner, he used my name as an audit precaution. When he wanted to steal from his own company's charity, he used his wife's shell company as an audit precaution. This is not a man protecting assets, this is a man committing fraud. It's not me, Evan roared, his voice cracking. I never wrote that. That's not my signature. She faked it. The girl is a hacker. She's a grifter, just like her mother. The room was dead silent. He had finally said it. Miles, who had been as still as the granite table, raised one single finger. He pointed to the door at the back of the room. The door opened. The IP analyst and the handwriting expert from day 50 walked in. They were not invited. They had been waiting. We anticipated this denial, Miles said. The analyst spoke. The emails were sent from an IP address registered to Mr. Evan Rowan. Rowan's home. The keystroke data on the digital signature is a 99.7% match to his personal tablet. The handwriting expert stepped up. While the signature was digital, the method of execution is identical to. The screen flashed to a dozen other documents. Memos, signatures, contracts, all signed by Evan, all with the same arrogant E. It's him, the expert said. The two experts turned and walked out. The door clicked shut. The silence was no longer silence, it was a vacuum. Evan was breathing in short, shallow gasps. Lena was staring at the table, her face ashen. Miles did not look at his son. He did not look at any of them. He looked at me, still standing at the lectern. Miss Phillips, he said, his voice perfectly level, as the new administrator of the fund that was defrauded, and as the board member, who has most clearly presented her case, you have the floor. What is your recommendation? They all looked at me, Evan, Lena, Robert, the CFO. They were all waiting for me to ask for money, for my piece. I took a deep breath. I looked at the professionals, the CFO, the COO, the people who ran the company. My recommendation is threefold, I said, my voice ringing out, clear and amplified. First, full financial restitution. The $2.3 million, plus interest, is to be repaid to the community fund within 30 days. This sum will be drawn from the personal assets of Evan Rowan, Lena Rowan, Robert Rowan, and Mark Rowan. Second, I continued, not pausing, the immediate termination of Evan Rowan from his role as vice president, and his removal from this board, effective immediately. All access, digital and physical, to be revoked by end of day. And third, I paused, letting the weight of it settle. Then, for the first time, I looked directly at my father. A formal public apology to be entered into the minutes of this meeting. He will apologize to the board for defrauding this company, and then he will apologize, on the record, to me by name. The room was stunned. Evan looked like I had just shot him. Everyone turned to Miles. They were all waiting for the king, for the father. Miles was silent for a long, cold 10 seconds. He looked at his son, his face a mask of stone. He looked at me, my face a mirror of it. This is a board of directors, Miles said finally, his voice flat. We do not operate on sentiment. We operate on data. The case presented by Ms. Phillips is clear, sourced, and undeniable. Her recommendation is severe, but it is precise. He looked at the CFO. I support the most clearly presented case. Do we have a motion to vote on the recommendation? My heart was hammering, but I did not tremble. I stood at the lectern, my hand on the microphone. For the first time in my life, the name Harper Phillips was spoken in a room of powerful people, and not a single person, not even my father, dared to question what it was worth. The vote was not a debate, it was an execution. The CFO made the motion. The COO seconded it. The non-family board members, the professionals who had built their careers on black and white ledgers, voted aye in a crisp, clean chorus. My uncle Robert and my cousin Mark, seeing the inevitable, abstained, their faces pale. It was a coward's vote. The only nay came from Evan. It was a pathetic, choked sound. The motion passed 8-1, with 2 abstentions. The resolution is carried, Miles said, his voice flat. Mr. Rowan's access will be revoked by close of business. He used the formal Mr., as if my father were a stranger, a failed employee. Evan didn't say anything. He just stood up, his chair scraping, and walked out of the boardroom. He didn't look at Lena. He didn't look at me. He just left. Lena, her face a mask of white-hot fury, gathered her things and followed him. The reckoning was over. The fallout was just beginning. Within 3 hours, the Charlotte Business Journal had the story. Someone in that room, probably my Uncle Robert, had leaked it, hoping to wound Miles. Rowan Freight Works in turmoil, Evan Rowan ousted, mysterious granddaughter emerges. Harper Phillips appointed to fund. The article was a mess of speculation. It hinted at family infighting, questions of governance, and a sudden dramatic shake-up. The narrative they were spinning was one of instability, of a patriarch losing his grip, of a mystery woman, a vagrant, being given the keys to the kingdom. The phones at Rowan Freight Works began to ring. Partners, investors, and the local press all wanted to know the same thing. Who was Harper Phillips and was the company stable? The leak intended to harm had simply given me a stage. They are painting a picture, I said to Miles. We were in his office now, the first time I had ever been there. It was vast, clean, and overlooked the city from the corner. They are painting me as a usurper, and you as a fool. A narrative, he said, looking out the window, is a weapon. They have chosen theirs. Now you will choose yours. I'm not going to fight them in the press, I said. No, he said, turning to me. You are not. You will make your case to the only people who matter, not the investors, not the press, the employees, the community, the people the fund is supposed to serve. He pointed to a calendar. The West Charlotte Town Hall tonight. It's a quarterly meeting funded by the Community Fund. They are expecting a check and a speech from a Rowan VP. They were expecting Evan. They'll get me, I said. The town hall was not in a glass tower. It was in a high school gymnasium. The air was hot, humid, and smelled of polished wood floors and stale popcorn. It was packed. There were teachers, small business owners, nurses, and more. In the back rows, a large contingent of men and women in the dark blue jackets of Rowan Freight Works, the drivers, the warehouse managers, the logistics crews, the people who actually made the company run. They were all here to see the ghost. I walked onto the small, makeshift stage. A microphone squealed with feedback. I was alone. Good evening, I said. The room was silent, a wall of skeptical, curious faces. My name is Harper Phillips. I am the new administrator of the Rowan Community Fund. I know there are a lot of questions about who I am, and I know what you've read. I took a breath. I'm not going to talk about my family. I'm here to talk about the fund. For a long time, the fund has been a name, a logo on a check. Today, that changes. I looked at the back row, at the men and women in the blue jackets. I know what it's like to have a name that doesn't work for you, to have a name that is used against you. A name that feels like an empty shell. I saw a few heads nod. They understood. My name, I said, my voice growing stronger, was once used as an empty shell, a ghost in a machine. From now on, my name and the name of this fund will be used to transport opportunity. I laid out my plan, not a vague promise, but a set of logistics. First, I said, the scholarship program is doubled, effective immediately, but we are adding a requirement. All scholarship recipients must mentor 2 younger students. We are not just funding degrees, we are building a network. Second, the emergency relief budget. It's no longer just for hurricanes. If a fire burns down your apartment complex, the fund's logistics will be there within 12 hours. Not with money, with moving trucks, with storage units, with prepaid hotel rooms. We are a logistics company. We will move for our community. I finished. I had spoken for maybe 5 minutes. The silence stretched. Then a man in the back row, a big guy with a graying beard and a Rowan Freight Works cap, stood up. He just started clapping slowly. Then another person in a blue jacket stood, and another. Soon, the entire back half of the room, the employees, were on their feet applauding. It wasn't a wild ovation. It was a steady, rhythmic, powerful sound. It was the sound of approval. They weren't clapping for a Rowan, they were clapping for a plan, for clarity. When I got back to the Rowan Tower, it was late. Miles was waiting for me in his office. The lights of the city spread out behind him. You did well, he said. It was the closest he'd ever come to a compliment. I just told the truth, I said. He was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window. I made a mistake, Harper, he said, his voice so low I almost didn't hear it. My greatest mistake. Not Evan. He is a mistake, but he is not my greatest one. He turned to look at me, and for the first time, the granite in his eyes was gone. I just saw an old, tired man. My son, he said, he was born weak. He was born a coward, and he was my flesh. So I protected him. I built walls around him. I enabled him. And you, he looked at me, you were born strong, and you were not my flesh. So I let you be cast out. His voice was thick with a self-loathing that was centuries old. I let the weakest person in this family be forced to learn strength all by herself in the dark. That was my sin, and I will not make it again. He walked to his desk. He picked up a single, thick document. This, he said, is the final transfer, the activation of the legacy clause. It moves the 10% non-voting shares from the primary trust into the community fund under your autonomous control. It is irrevocable. He picked up a heavy black pen, signed his name, Miles Rowan, with a sharp, decisive stroke, and slid the document across the desk to me. It was done. The next day, the bartering began. My family, realizing the legal and financial walls were impenetrable, tried to find a side door. A message from my Uncle Robert, left with my new assistant. Just want to talk to Harper about the kids, about her cousins. This has all been a terrible misunderstanding, a rejection from me. All discussions regarding the restitution of funds will be held in a documented public forum with counsel present, I replied. Send your lawyer. Harper. I know you must hate us. I understand. But Evan is your father. He is a broken man. I am begging you, as a woman, to think of the children. The children. My half-siblings, the ones I had never met, the ones she had used as a shield. My thumbs were shaking. But my reply was steady. I am not touching the children. No one is. This has never been about them. This is about the adults, and the adults will be held responsible for what they did. I blocked her number. That night, the adrenaline finally wore out. The 90-day war, the boardroom, the town hall, it all crashed. And the universe, in its infinite, cruel wisdom, decided to kick me one more time. Toby got sick. It wasn't serious, he just stopped eating. He was listless, his eyes sad. I panicked. I, who had just faced down a boardroom, was terrified of a sick dog. I found myself at 2 o'clock in the morning in a 24-hour veterinary emergency clinic, a place with the same harsh fluorescent lights and smell of antiseptic as the police precinct. I sat on the cold linoleum floor of the exam room, my arms wrapped around Toby as the vet, a young woman with kind, tired eyes, gave him a gentle exam. He's just stressed, the vet said. He has an upset stomach. Probably from all the changes. New food, new apartment, a new schedule. He's just mirroring you. You know, he's a rescue. She gave him a small shot for nausea. And just like that, he seemed to perk up, licking her hand. I paid the bill $400 without flinching. I sat in my car in the empty parking lot. Toby, wrapped in a blanket on my lap, finally asleep. And I cried. I cried for my mother. I cried for the girl at the gas station. I cried because I had all this power and all this money, and I had been terrified of losing the one small, decent thing in my life. I was fighting for a 10% share of $1 billion company. But this warm, breathing, four-legged creature, this was the asset I was protecting. This was my honor. I went home. I slept for 3 hours. I woke up at dawn. I made coffee, and I sat at my new, clean desk. The final meeting, the one to formally accept the restitution and the apology, was that afternoon. I opened a blank document. I started to type. My name is Harper Phillips, I wrote. I deleted. I rewrote. I kept it simple. I kept it precise. I was not asking for mercy. I was delivering a verdict. When I was done, I printed it. It was 1 page, 126 words. I walked into Miles's office at 8 a.m. He was already there. I placed the page on his desk. He read it. His face was unreadable. He read it again. Then he picked up his heavy black pen. He found the line. I am here to ask for the formal apology. With 2 sharp, angry slashes, he crossed out the word ask. He wrote in his spiky, aggressive script, require. He found the next one. We ask that the board accept this restitution. He crossed it out. Mandate. He looked up at me. The old, cold fire was back in his eyes. He tapped the paper. This is not a negotiation, Harper, he said. This is a sentence. Deliver it. We looked at each other. The old man who had built an empire, the woman who had been forged by his mistakes. We were not grandfather and granddaughter. We were not even allies. The old man who had built an empire, the woman who had been forged by his mistakes. We were not grandfather and granddaughter. We were not even allies. We were finally an understanding. It was time. The boardroom on the 28th floor felt different. The first time, it had been a box of judgment. Today, it was an execution chamber. The same glass walls, the same polished granite table, the same cold, neutral light, but the tension was gone, replaced by the flat, sterile atmosphere of an operating room after the patient has been pronounced. The red light on the central microphone was glowing. We were being recorded, videotaped. Every word, every flinch, would be part of the permanent corporate record. On the left sat the family. They were no longer a block of power, they were a shattered row of defendants. Evan, my father, was a hollowed-out man, his skin grey. Lena, beside him, was a statue of pure, contained rage, her mask of virtue gone, leaving only the bone-white fury beneath. Robert and Mark were there as required, their faces grim, their eyes fixed on the blank table in front of them, looking like men awaiting a sentencing. On the right sat the professionals, the CFO, the COO, Alistair, and me. Miles sat at the head, a block of granite. He opened the meeting without preamble. This board is reconvened to formalize the resolution passed at our last meeting, he said. The minutes are open. The recording is active. Ms. Phillips, you have the floor. I stood up. I did not go to the lectern. I stood at my place. I looked at the CFO, at the COO. I did not look at my father. Thank you, I said, my voice amplified by the MIC at my seat. I want to be clear about the purpose of this resolution. I do not want anyone in this room to be poorer. I do not want their houses or their boats. I paused, and for the first time, I let my eyes sweep across the family side of the table. I just want my name to stop being used as a tool for theft. The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. I yielded my time to legal counsel to present the final terms. I sat down. Alistair stood. She was the very picture of bloodless efficiency. For the board's resolution passed 8-1, a formal restitution plan has been drafted. The screen, please. The massive wall screen lit up. It was not a flowchart. It was not an email. It was a spreadsheet. It was a bill, restitution schedule, Rowan Community Fund. It listed 4 names. Evan Rowan, Lena Rowan, Robert Rowan, Mark Rowan. Next to each name was a dollar amount, the $2.3 million plus interest plus the forensic accounting fees, all divided up based on the money trail the auditors had uncovered. My cousin Mark's yacht, my uncle's art, Lena's Shell Company, and the bulk of it, the lion's share, laid at the feet of my father. Restitution will be made in 3 installments, Alastair said, her voice a monotone. The first of 50% is due within 30 days, the remainder within 90. Failure to comply will result in legal escalation. This is... My father's voice was a dry croak. He was looking at Miles. His hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Father, please. This is a family matter. We can handle this internally. We don't need a public record of this. Please, Miles. Let's keep this in the family. Alastair did not even let Miles respond. She turned her head slightly, her gaze pinning my father to his chair. Mr. Rowan, she said, and the Mr. was a slap. The moment you and your associates diverted $2.3 million from the Rowan Community Fund, which is a registered 501c3 charitable organization, this ceased to be a family matter. It became a federal crime. This is not a conversation. This is a documented correction to a public filing to avoid further inquiry from the IRS. You are not protecting your family's name, you are protecting the company from your actions. Evan visibly shrank. I stood up again, cutting into the silence. Which brings us to the second and final term of the resolution. I took a single piece of paper from my portfolio, the one I had written, the one Miles had edited. I slid it across the polished granite. It glided silently across the long table, a white flag of surrender, until it stopped perfectly in front of my father's trembling hands. That, I said, is the apology, the one I recommended, the one the board approved. You will read it aloud now so it may be entered verbatim into the minutes of this meeting. He stared at it. He did not pick it up. He was paralyzed. It was Lena who moved. She put her hand on his arm, her red lacquered nails digging into his suit jacket. Her voice when it came was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. It was shaking, but with theatrical, not real, sorrow. Evan, don't, she whispered, just loud enough for the microphone to catch. Don't let her do this. She's still your daughter. How can you? Evan looked at me. She's your child. My father said nothing. He was a void. He just stared at the white paper that held his sentence. All eyes in the room, even the professionals, swiveled to Miles. This was the moment, the father, the son, the endgame. Miles Rowan had not moved a muscle. He was not looking at his son. He was looking at the CFO. We are here, Miles said, his voice a low, cold rumble, to finalize a board resolution. I have said it before, and I will say it for the record one last time. I choose my successors and my partners based on integrity, not on bloodline. The time for sentiment is over. He turned his gaze, not to me, but to my father. Mr. Rowan. Rowan, read the apology, or I will have Ms. Alastair move for contempt of the board, and we will pursue the full extent of criminal charges. The choice is yours. It was not a choice, it was a command. My father's hand shook. He picked up the paper. I, Evan Rowan, do hereby apologize to the board, his voice cracked. He couldn't do it. Louder. Mr. Rowan. Rowan, Alastair said, her voice like a whip. For the record, he took a ragged breath. I, Evan Rowan, do hereby apologize to the board for. His voice cracked. He couldn't do it. Read the words, Miles commanded. For committing fraud, he choked out. And I apologize too. He looked at me just once. His eyes were empty. There was no remorse, just nothing. Harper Phillips by name, he finished. He dropped the paper, as if it were on fire. Thank you, I said. The terms are met. Miles looked at the board. We need a final vote to approve the terms as executed and close the minutes on this matter. All in favor? It was a chorus, aye. Aye. 8 voices, crisp and final. All opposed. A single, pathetic, choked sound from my father, nay. The resolution passes 8-1, Miles said. Let the record show. This meeting is adjourned. One moment, I said. I held up my hand. The entire room froze. Even Miles looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. I looked at Alistair. One final piece of business for the record. I leaned into my microphone. I require formal verbal confirmation that all standing authorizations, powers of attorney, or signature privileges associated in any way with the name Harper Phillips on any and all third-party corporate, private, or family accounts have been permanently and irrevocably revoked. I was showing my teeth. I was making sure every I was dotted and every T was crossed. Alistair did not even blink. She looked at her tablet, tapped it once. I can confirm, Miss Phillips, that blanket revocation order was executed by my office at 8:50 a.m. this morning, 10 minutes before this meeting began. She looked up, and for the first time, I saw the faintest glimmer of a smile. You are legally firewalled completely. As if on cue, the high-speed printer in the corner of the room, the one that printed the official minutes, whirred to life. It made a sharp, clean asterisk thunk asterisk sound. It spat out a single page. Alistair walked over and tore the page from the machine. The sound of the perforation ripping was the loudest, most final sound in the room. It was the sound of a cord being cut. It was the sound of a season ending. As my grandfather had said, she walked back and placed the confirmation in front of me. Miles Rowan reached into his suit jacket. He did not pull out a pen. He did not pull out a folder. He pulled out a key. It was not a new, sleek electronic key card. It was an old, heavy, ornate brass key. It looked like it belonged to a 19th century bank. He did not hand it to me. He placed it on the black granite table, and, with one finger, slid it. It glided, heavy and silent, across the table, across the divide between him and me, stopping perfectly in front of my hand. The grand atrium of Rowan Freight Works was built to inspire awe. It was a cathedral of capitalism, all white marble and brushed steel, soaring 3 stories up to a glass ceiling. It was designed for silence, for the respectful echo of expensive shoes. Today, that silence was shattered. It was a theater. The local press, roped off to the left, was a restless sea of cameras and microphones, a tangle of cables and hot, impatient energy. On the balconies and fanned out behind the press line stood hundreds of employees, warehouse managers in their blue Rowan jackets, data analysts, drivers, executives. They had all been invited to witness this. They were the jury. At the center of the marble floor, on a low, black-draped stage, stood a single, stark lectern. 2 microphones were attached, 2 black stems awaiting 2 very different speakers. The air was cold from the industrial air conditioning, but the League lights from the news crews threw off a hot, invasive, accusatory glare. I stood to the right of the stage. Alistair was beside me, a silent statue of legal precision. Miles stood on the left, a block of granite. Between us, at the back of the stage, sat my new assistant, a calm woman named Sarah. At her feet, sitting perfectly, was Toby. He wore a simple new black leash. He was my one non-negotiable term for this appearance. Miles stepped to the lectern first. The asterisk click, click, click asterisk of camera shutters exploded in the atrium. He did not blink. We are here, he said, his voice needing no amplification, though the system carried it, to address the reports of the last 48 hours. We are not here to discuss rumors. We are here to present facts and to introduce the new standard of governance at this company. He gestured to me. I introduce Ms. Harper Phillips. Harper Phillips. I walked to the lectern. The hot lights found me. I felt their heat on my face, but inside, I was ice. I gripped the sides of the lectern. I looked out. I did not see the press. I looked past them, to the employees in the back, the men and women who were the real company. My name is Harper Phillips, I said. My voice was steady. It did not waver. For most of my life, that name was a ghost. It was a blank space on a family chart. It was a weapon used against me by others. It was an empty shell. I took a breath. The words sharp and clear in the vast space. As of today, that is over. The name Harper Phillips will no longer be a blank space on any chart. It will be the signature at the bottom of the page. It will be the standard of accountability. Thank you. That was all. 126 words. I stepped back. My heart a cold, steady drum. Miles stepped forward again. And now, to provide the necessary context for the board's recent actions, Mr. Evan Rowan will read a formal statement. This was the moment, the bloodletting. My father was escorted to the stage by two men in dark suits. He was not in handcuffs. He was not being touched, but he was being herded, a wolf that had been declawed and defanged. He looked like a man who had not slept in a century. His expensive grey suit was rumpled. His eyes were red, swollen, and darting, unable to land on any one thing. Terrified of the light. Alistair stepped forward and placed the single sheet of paper on the lectern, the speech I had written, the apology he had signed. Evan stared at it, the cameras zoomed in, their lenses hungry. The sound of their autofocus mechanisms, a low mechanical growl. Read it, Miles commanded from the side. His voice was not a request. Evan flinched. He put his shaking hands on the podium. The microphone picked up the rustle of the paper, amplifying his terror. He stopped. He licked his lips. Evan Rowan, he began, his voice a dry, cracked whisper. The wall behind the stage, a massive, two-story slab of white marble, flickered to life. It was a screen. I admit that I willfully and repeatedly used the identity of my daughter, Harper Phillips, to open fraudulent lines of credit. As he spoke the words, the screen lit up with the credit card application, with the EV signature magnified 20 feet high. A collective gasp rose from the crowd of employees. He was trembling now, a prisoner of his own confession, forced to continue. I further admit that I directed the illegal transfer of over $2.2 million from the Rowan Community Fund into a private shell company. The screen changed. The flowchart, the wire transfer, the signature approved, Evan Rowan. He was choking on the words, each one a nail in his own coffin. Finally, he gripped the podium, his knuckles white. I admit that I knowingly created and spread a false narrative about her mother, Nora Phillips, to conceal my crimes. The screen flashed again, the email. She took the payout. He had done it. He had read his own conviction into the public record. He was done. The press was in a frenzy, shutters clicking, reporters whispering frantically into phones, the scent of blood in the water. He looked up, his eyes desperate and hollow. He found mine. He was a drowning man. He let go of the paper. Harper, he gasped, leaning into the microphone, breaking the script. Harper. Dad, Please. It was his last pathetic attempt to make it personal, to make it about family, to make me a daughter, and not his executioner. I walked forward. I did not go to the lectern. I stopped 10 feet from him. I did not look at him. I looked at the crowd. My name, I said, my voice clear and cold, cutting through his plea, is no longer yours to sign. He shattered. A sound left him, a dry, terrible sob. The two men in suits stepped forward and gently, firmly, escorted him off the stage. A broken, hollow man, his public execution complete. The atrium was utterly silent. You could hear the hum of the League lights. Then Miles Rowan stepped to the lectern. He stood next to me. He placed his old, heavy, steady hand on my shoulder. It was a gesture of possession, a gesture of coronation. I am announcing today, Miles boomed into the silence, 2 appointments, effective immediately. Ms. Harper Phillips is the executive director of the Rowan Community Fund. A polite, nervous splatter of applause from the press. He held up his hand, silencing the small sound. And in a newly created role vital to the future of this company, she will also serve as our first internal ethics advisor, reporting directly to me. She will have autonomous authority to audit any division, any time. She is the new standard. This time the applause was different. It started as it had in the gymnasium, from the back, from the employees, the drivers in their blue jackets, the warehouse managers, the data analysts. It was not a polite splatter. It was a solid, rhythmic, powerful wave of sound. It was not cheering. It was not ecstatic. It was the sound of a heavy, 1,000-ton mechanism finally, definitively clicking into place. It was the sound of a lock engaging. I stood there for a moment. Then I gave a single, short nod, a bow, acknowledging them. I turned my back on the press, on the lights. I walked to the back of the stage. Sarah stood up. I unclipped Toby's leash, and in one smooth motion, I bent and scooped his warm, wiry body into my arms. He buried his head in my neck. I was holding the one true thing. I walked off the stage through a side door Alistair held open, and into the cool, quiet executive corridor. The applause faded behind me, cut off by the heavy soundproof door. I walked alone, Toby in my arms, down the long marble hallway toward the private elevator. I did not look back. At the end of the hall, by the glass doors leading to the outside world, I paused. I caught my reflection in the dark, tinted glass. The woman in the reflection was not me, not the me I had known. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes were clear and cold. She was wearing a simple, sharp black blazer. She looked formidable. She looked like she belonged here. The girl from the gas station, the one with the stained t-shirt, the desperate eyes, and the cardboard sign, was gone. She was a ghost. She had been erased, but this time, I had been the one to do it. I pushed the glass door open. The bright, hot noon sun hit me. It was blinding. The city was loud. The long black limousine was at the curb. The same one, the one that had rescued me from the gas station. The driver, the same silent, linebacker-sized man, stepped out. But this time, he did not assess me. He bowed his head. "Good afternoon, Miss Phillips." "Phillips," he said. He opened the back door. "Where to?" I settled Toby on the plush leather seat. "The Northbridge office," I said. "My 2 o'clock meeting is waiting." I slid in. The door closed with a heavy, pressurized thud, sealing out the city, sealing out the noise. As the car pulled smoothly into traffic, I reached into my blazer pocket. My fingers found the burner phone Miles had given me, the one I kept as a reminder, and beside it, the heavy, old, cold brass key to the vault. The metal of the key tapped against the glass of the phone, a single small, final sound, a quiet asterisk ting star. It was the sound of the very last lock in the world clicking into place. A reporter who had run from the lobby tapped on the tinted window. I did not lower it. He shouted, his voice muffled. "Harper, how does it feel? Is this revenge?" I looked at his desperate, distorted face through the glass. I did not smile. If anyone asks how I got my revenge, I whispered to the empty car. You tell them I just corrected my name. The limo turned the corner, accelerating and moving me toward the next meeting, the one I was leading.